Welcome to Let's Talk About Antisemitism, a video series from Holocaust Museum Houston. Today, let's talk about antisemitism and the Holocaust. First, let's remember that antisemitism means conscious or unconscious negative bias against Jews just because they are Jews. This means antisemitism can exist whether people realize something is anti-Semitic or not. This can include bias in attitudes, in words, or in actions. Without anti-Semitism, the Holocaust could not have happened. The Holocaust was the murder of 6 million Jews across Europe by the Nazis and their collaborators during World War II. But it wasn't the first time anti-Semitism appeared. Anti-Semitism existed long before the Holocaust. Just because Jews are different, they have faced expulsion from their ancestral homeland, violence, false rumors, blames for things that aren't their fault, being kicked out of multiple different countries, restrictions on where they can live, more violence, and still more violence. But despite these many challenges, Jews have survived, kept their identity and traditions, maintained their culture, made positive contributions to many different societies, and become an integral part of the communities in which they live. Before the Holocaust, Jews across Europe lived normal lives just like you and I, as part of the countries and communities in which they lived. These pictures from before World War II are of Holocaust survivors who came to Houston after the Holocaust, pictured along with their families and friends. So, what changed? After the trauma of losing World War I, adapting to a dramatic change in their political system from a monarchy to a democracy, and dealing with multiple economic crises, some Germans were looking for a scapegoat, someone to blame all their problems on. The Nazis weaponized anti-Semitism to falsely blame Jews for Germany's problems. They made anti-Semitism government policy. They made it a normal part of life for the millions of Germans who looked to the Nazis for guidance and hope. As an example of this, I will let Houston survivor Naomi Warren tell you a little bit about her experience.
Of course, I was growing up in Poland, and when I was very small, I never experienced any differences. Just because I was being Jewish, because I had a lot of friends who were not Jewish. But in the later years of my life, when I became 13, 14, 15, I started feeling the difference of attitudes of some of my friends, because the influence of Germany was coming into Poland.
Let's look at an example of the propaganda put out by the Nazis that impacted people like Naomi. We will be analyzing a book called The Poisonous Mushroom. This book's title and cover claim that Jews are like poisonous mushrooms that may look good to eat, but are secretly bad. It includes many untrue stereotypes about Jews. Let's look at some of these now. Some of the stereotypes included in the poisonous mushroom include the stereotype that Jews are inferior in everything from their appearance to their mind. In this illustration from the poisonous mushroom, the boy is pointing to what looks like a 6 on the board. This is actually supposed to be a typical Jewish nose. This is the stereotype that all Jews are the same, which is not true at all. As you can see from this family photo of Houston survivor Samuel Spritzer, even Jews in the same family look different, including having different noses. Jews are actually a very diverse group. The poisonous mushroom also claimed that Jews were outsiders, aliens in any society where they lived. In the illustration, the Jews are shown separate from everyone else and in the shadows, outsiders who don't belong. The Nazis claimed that because Jews were outsiders, they should be kicked out of Europe. This is also untrue. Jews are neighbors and members of communities all over the world, just like Henny, Madeline, and Herbert in the photo before the Holocaust. A further stereotype from the poisonous mushroom is that Jews are criminals. In the image, the Jewish person is seen as a scary threat to the children. The Nazis claimed that because Jews were criminals, they should be put in prison or otherwise separated from society. But this is also false. Being Jewish does not mean someone is automatically a criminal. Ben Wasserman and his parents certainly weren't criminals. They just wanted to live their lives in peace. Here is Ben Wasserman again, this time with his family and their neighbors in Dresden, Germany. Jews in Germany were Germans too. They paid their taxes, fought for Germany in World War I, and were part of German society and culture. Can you guess what percentage of Germans were Jewish when the Nazis came to power in 1933? Go ahead, guess. What do you think? In reality, less than 1% of Germans were Jewish. It was only anti-Semitism that made Germans think that this tiny minority was a problem and that they should be excluded from society. What would you do if your town put up a sign saying, "Jews are not wanted here"? That happened in Nazi Germany. What would you do if laws were passed discriminating against a particular group of people just because of who they were? This also happened to Jews in Nazi Germany. Not only did Jews lose their right to vote, but they also couldn't be journalists or serve in the military. Jewish doctors could not treat non-Jewish patients. Jews were banned from participating in German economic life and excluded from public assistance. Jewish veterans were not allowed to wear their uniforms. Jews couldn't be on public streets on certain days and were forced to sell their businesses, had their radios taken away, were not allowed to buy chocolate and cakes, lost their telephone connections, had to wear a yellow star in public, were eventually forbidden to leave Europe, and had to register and give up their pets. These are just some of the hundreds of laws that the Nazis used to make Jews into outsiders in their own communities. These Jewish women are wearing signs saying they have been excluded from the national community. So let's look at how the Nazis put their ideas into action. We are going to look at a quote from the official newspaper of the SS that was published before the beginning of World War II. It was published in response to the November pogrom, a night of violence against Jews across Germany in which almost every Jewish place of worship was destroyed. The article is discussing the vital necessity to exterminate the Jewish subhumanity as we exterminate all criminals in our law-abiding state with fire and sword. The outcome will be the actual and final end to Jewry in Germany, its total annihilation. Remember the false claim from the poisonous mushroom that all Jews are criminals? Here it is again, except the goals have changed. Instead of arresting Jews, the goal is now their destruction. These ideas became mass murder during World War II. This quote is from a letter a German soldier wrote home in 1942. This soldier had actually witnessed Jews being killed just because they were Jews, but he approved because, as he said, the Jews are guilty of everything. This battle is an emergency that has to be fought through and through. Only then will the world find its eternal peace. Again, we see the lie of Jews as criminals from the poisonous mushroom, but now they are guilty of everything. In 1941, another soldier claimed that this time we must get rid of or neutralize all the Jews. Then it would soon look better for the world. During World War II, the goal of getting rid of the Jews of Europe was being realized by people who found anti-Semitism to be completely normal and saw mass murder as justified. During World War II, Jews were forced to identify with a yellow star, rounded up in ghettos across Eastern Europe, and killed in shootings, or they were deported to death camps. About 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust just because of who they were. You would think something like the Holocaust would show the world the dangers of anti-Semitism, but unfortunately, anti-Semitism didn't end with the Holocaust. It even helped create new forms of anti-Semitism. One of these forms is Holocaust denial, which means claiming that the Holocaust, one of the most well-documented events in human history, either didn't happen or has been exaggerated. This is completely false. Most of the evidence we have about the Holocaust actually comes from the Nazis. For example, this picture of two brothers taken at Auschwitz was taken by the Nazis. The boys were murdered shortly after the photo was taken. Another new form of anti-Semitism is Holocaust inversion, which means misusing the memory of the Holocaust to claim that Jews are somehow just like the Nazis. It should be easy to see why this is so offensive and dangerous, but it still happens all over the world. Dr. Deborah Lipstadt explains that those who accuse Jews and/or Israel of genocide and other crimes committed by the Nazis are making a false comparison, which elevates by a factor of a zillion any wrongdoings Israel might have done, and lessens by a factor of a zillion what the Germans did. Anti-Semitism, big or small, is dangerous. It led to the atrocities of the Holocaust and is still negatively impacting Jews today. Thank you for taking the time to learn about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. Holocaust Museum Houston would also like to thank the generous donors who made Let's Talk About Anti-Semitism possible: the Texas Holocaust, Genocide, and Anti-Semitism Advisory Commission, the Houston Jewish Community Foundation, Kathy and Dr. Joseph Yankovic, Richard Lowenstern, Diane Merrill, and the Sivia and Melvin Wolf Family Foundation. Thank you.